Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Ditte Madsen and I will be hosting you. This webinar was created because EduPixel, a software company in Denmark that I work for, we have made a KA210 small-scale project with Denmark and France. We wanted to research the potential for XR technology, so virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality, XR being just the umbrella term for these technologies. We wanted to examine their potential in vocational education in Denmark and France. And so we entered into a partnership, which has resulted in a project which has now resulted in a webinar and a report. And so our project was the Survey XR Potential for VET, and we examined the behavioral, technical, and mechanical aspects, and we have sort of shortened the name into XR EduTech. This was a project between 2023 and 24. And today in this webinar for you, I will briefly go over what our project was about, our partners, the baseline knowledge that we gathered, and then further data from interviews and surveys. And I will end off with recommendations in regards to XR and its use in vocational education. This webinar is a brief overview. We also have a report that is more that is fuller and more condensed, but I only have about a half hour of your time, so I'm gonna keep it concise. But our participants in this project were obviously EduPixel, software company in Denmark, and our partner Jan Frouchet from France, and both Jan Frouchet and my superior, Michael Lundorf Hansen from EduPixel, have worked in educational management for many years, and we in EduPixel have developed educational material digitally for a few years, and so we wanted to do an examination and then a pilot case study of the potential for XR in vocational education or just VET in Europe. And so our project scope was to establish a state of affairs, gather baseline knowledge, and gather a larger network of VET educators in especially France and Denmark. For this, we did alignment workshops in both countries and visited schools and talked to them and listened to what they needed specifically in their schools in regards to digital educational material. We then did obviously data collection. We had interviews with companies, enterprises in both France and Denmark. And then we did surveys. We sent surveys out to our new VET educational network, and many of the educators came back to us and answered our surveys so we could gather an overview of the needs and challenges for the educators when adopting these new XR and also AI technologies in their teaching. And we finished off with some recommendations overall for the EU in regards to the adoption of XR technology in education. And obviously, we will also make our report widely available and just briefly go over the project now in this webinar. So when gathering baseline knowledge, we looked into academic studies in regards to the potential of XR, both in VET and in higher education. Some were practical case studies, and some were more sort of critical research into what might be useful with these technologies and what might not be. And we found some research on the need for future employees in VET and VET's relationship with the green transition and lifelong learning, and just generally challenges within the educational sector. Most of what we found obviously was experimental. There's still a lack of best practice within these technologies. We found them mostly used in medical training and industry, so fields where you need to practice an actual hard or practical skill. And especially we saw that XR might have potential in what we've called hard to access environments. So a practical skill that you need to train again and again and again, but it might be in an environment that is harder to access as a student. So it could be when operating heavy or expensive machinery, or in medical training where you need a patient to practice on. Then there are studies that XR can be useful in practicing these skills. Our alignment workshops, our main ambitions for these obviously were to establish a VET network and arrange for knowledge transfer and see the potential of XR in each country respectively. And we looked into the CEDEFOP sort of reports on the states of VET in both countries, and we saw the main challenges in France might be just keeping groups of learners in education, or sort of establishing the attractiveness and equality of vocational education rather than other forms of education. And in Denmark, we saw labor market shortages in the CEDEFOP report as of 2023. We also saw the challenges in education attainment and adapting VET for the green and digital transitions. So France and Denmark, they somewhat align, but there are a few key differences. These are pictures from our alignment workshops where we got to show off some technology and find a larger network, and we were shown around and generally had a pretty good time. But then our priority was to look into the industry as well, the industry that might hire candidates with a VET background. And so we found 8 companies that were willing to let us interview them, mainly working in energy management or industry training, robotics or hydraulics. And all of them were in the experimental stages as of 2023 in regards to XR. They were still uncertain about their return on investments. They did see potential in remote service or training or visualization of complex data. And they saw often a need for a digital upskill, both within their own company, but also with their clients. Obviously, if their clients don't see a need for XR tools yet, then there is no need to look further into it. But mostly, these companies were willing to train their candidates further in-house, and were willing to make that investment, and were generally quite satisfied with the digital skill set or skill level of VET candidates that they hired. We then sent out a preliminary survey as of autumn 2023, and obviously asked our new network to participate in these surveys. In the survey, we asked about XR being this umbrella term, extended reality for mixed reality, augmented reality, and virtual reality. reality, but we also included AI assistant tools in this definition that we did of AI. And so in Denmark, we see higher familiarity at nearly 64%, and lower familiarity in France, with no one saying yes. We have realized later, though, that there might be like a linguistic challenge, that this reality entendu in France might be less widely known, rather than the French term for virtual reality. So they might be more familiar with virtual reality if we had called it that rather than XR. When asked about their concerns, are there concerns regarding the profitability and adaptability of XR technologies? And we had answers from France. The integration of new technologies often raises maintenance issues due to untrained personnel. They worry about whether there is added value to this investment, and someone pointed out that students tend to lack care when it's not their own equipment. So there's also a worry of the investment in hardware. And there's a need for a training of trainers initiative, given that they mentioned untrained personnel. In Denmark, same question. Again, there's more familiarity, but worries about cost and time, enough time to learn to use these technologies and develop relevant teaching materials. They also mentioned that developing VR scenarios is expensive and often not very flexible. And additionally, someone added attitude among teachers and keeping up with changes. So simply some individual educators might simply not be interested in these technologies, which is completely valid. We asked about recommendations. What recommendations would you give for a successful integration of XR technologies in this sector? And in France, someone very practical said lightweight headsets that can stay on the head for at least 2 hours without stiff necks. That is a fair point. And again, they mentioned taking the time to train the teachers, and a further integration into their work. In Denmark, someone stated the need to start teaching about the technologies before begin teaching with them. So this focus on understanding these technologies first. They said time and qualified guidance, and then small, secure successes, which is a really good recommendation to start small and to gain knowledge and success stories. Respondents were asked, how do you envision the future of VET with the integration of modern technologies like XR? And someone said, technology is a fixed part of VET. This is another one we need to learn to use. Our students will use it in their work. So very down to earth, very optimistic, which was lovely. We also did in sustainability and green initiatives, and so posed questions about that. And obviously, actively implementing 62.5% in Denmark, somewhere in the planning stages, and somewhere in between, only 12% not currently considering. So in France, it was a 50-50 of actively implementing and in planning stages. So it is on the agenda in French and Danish VET institutions. A year later, we then sent out a follow-up survey as of autumn 2024, which was a bit more practical, and we had these objectives regarding actual practical use and digital readiness and challenges. So the first question, do you use XR? There's a typo in there. It was meant to say, do you use XR or AI-assisted technologies yourself in your work? Apologies for that. 50% of French respondents said yes, and 84% of Danish respondents then said yes. Interestingly, we then asked, do you feel you have the necessary competencies to use XR in your work? Whereas 72% of Danish respondents said no, and 100% of French respondents said no. Which is interesting because clearly they've just answered that some of them use these technologies, but when asked about their competencies and the sort of self-confidence in their own competencies, it is slightly lower. But on the upside, we also asked, in your opinion, will XR technologies have a positive impact on the lifelong learning of employees and educators? Whereas a majority in both countries said yes, which is optimistic. We then asked, can you think of a hard skill? And by hard skill, we simply meant, practical skills, something that needs continual training that would benefit from utilizing XR. And France said languages, mechanics, sales, and things of that nature, and also demonstrating of technical gesture in a sporting discipline. That's very specific. In Denmark, they also said negotiation and sales, interactive assembly instructions, programming. And then interestingly, someone said, not really. Vocational students are used to using real tools, not VR controllers, which is a completely valid point, and I will get back to it. We then asked about challenges. Do you recognize any of these challenges that might make it difficult to adopt XR or adopt it further? We obviously have two different languages. Here with 56% of Danes saying lack of training and 66.7% of Frenchmen saying lack of training. So that is a majority in both countries. France also say lack of time, which is the yellow one here in the Danish column at 24%. And also Denmark points out lack of resources as well. And only a couple of Danes, 8%, say none of the above. So lack of training is a clear majority. In regards to readiness and potential, we asked, would you like to participate in EU initiatives related to the adoption of XR? So larger projects, for example, where we in France had a 50-50, yes and maybe. So we had no one saying no. And in Denmark, we had 40% saying yes, 28% saying no, and 32% saying maybe. Further on challenges and opportunities, we asked, what do you think would be the most effective way to implement XR technologies in your institution? French majority said government or industry-sponsored programs for schools. And the second one was hiring external XR consultants for implementation and training. Danish majority said pilot projects where schools are matched with companies for testing and feedback. And the second one, knowledge sharing projects with other schools. So here we also see the reflection of the sort of worries or challenges. There's funding, obviously, there's skills training, and there is knowledge sharing in a more practical sense. We found that a majority are willing to participate in pilot programs with industry partners to implement XR technologies. Some had some ifs, ands, or buts, like it depended on the project and depended on whether the school could receive funding or there was enough time, etc. But we did see a clear majority of willingness to participate. We then asked, what types of training and resources do you think would be most beneficial for teachers in integrating XR technologies into teaching? Where in a French top three, in a French top 3, they said practical workshops, online courses and tutorials, and mentor programs. In Denmark, they also said practical workshops was also the top one, and then mentor programs, and then also financial support. So we are along the same lines of what these educators need, respectively. Do you think your institution currently has the necessary infrastructure to implement XR technology? Was our next question. And in France, we have another 50-50, with 50% saying, no, we need financial support for equipment, and 50% saying, no, we need technical support. So these are the two biggest needs in the French respondents at this time. And in Denmark, the majority said, no, we need competence development of personnel. So again, skills training and upskilling of the educators. And 36% saying, no, we need financial support for equipment, because equipment is indeed expensive. Software is as well. And only in Denmark did we have 24% saying, yes, we have the infrastructure and are ready to implement XR. This brings me to the recommendations for the EU or for other VET institutions that we have gathered based on respondents' feedback. The top one is to further address the need for training of trainers, and simply like a sustainable upskilling of educators' competencies within these technologies will build further successes and will build confidence and hopefully build interest. And these educators will see further potential in these technologies. Secondly, we recommend to highlight the benefit of XR in hard to access environments. So continual training of a skill that is otherwise hard to train somehow. Educators will know these environments better than I will, but most will have some sort of environment that can be unsafe or hard to access. And as a third one, we realize that XR can additionally benefit the training of soft skills. Educators mentioned more soft skills than we had anticipated, things like language learning or sales and negotiations that also take continual practice but are less tools in hand sort of practical, because again we had the educators saying that they didn't really see the need for XR because VET students are used to handling tools and not VR controllers. But we also then see some soft skills that could benefit from digital training or digital material. Our fourth one is integrating XR content into existing EU digital education platforms. So simply just expose educators to more of this content and then generate knowledge and ideas. And our fifth one absolutely is cross-sector collaborations, because we see willingness from the educators and also we saw enthusiasm in industry representatives. So these are the recommendations that we had. They are further explained in our report that will be made widely available. There's a bit more data in the report as well. But I only had a maximum of 30 minutes of your time, I believe, so I had to run through it quickly. But thank you for being here, and if you have any questions or want to see the report but can't find it for some reason, please contact us either at InnoPixel, or Jan Frocher is also available. We will send you the report directly, anything you need. Yeah, thank you so much for being here.